I forgot to start recording, so here's the first problem. We're doing a second one similar to it, but you could hit pause and see the work, and then we'll work on the other one. So for this one, we plugged in the h plus 1 and then we squared it. Now that negative has to distribute to only what's in parentheses. So we have a negative x squared minus 2xh minus h squared plus 3. The 3 wasn't included in the parenthesis, so it's still positive. Any questions up to there? Nothing else can be combined or simplified. So that's f of x plus h. We want to subtract the original function. So we want to subtract this. Now you can rewrite everything and distribute the negative, or we can make this a positive and then change the signs inside the parenthesis. When we do that, we should be able to cancel everything in this parenthesis. We have a positive x squared and a negative x squared. We have a negative 3 and a positive 3. We're left with two terms that have h's in them. So all your terms that are left should have h's. Any questions so far? We've simplified this, so now we want to divide by h. You can divide an h from each of the three terms, or you can factor an h out of the top and reduce. So if we factor an h out of the top, that leaves negative 2x. Pulling 1 from here leaves a minus h. The h's cancel and leave this. If you did it the other way, three terms, all of them have an h. We get rid of one h from each of them, and we're left with a negative 2x minus h. Any questions on that? So there's one on the MyLabs homework. When we get more into this, there'll be more. And there's 3 different versions we'll look at. But right now we're only working on polynomials. Any questions on this one? Okay, section 2.1, they have a little bit of a review at the beginning, and I put a few of them on the MyLabs. We did cover these in the review part also. But I think they're the most difficult. So if we have 3 times x minus 1 over 4 minus 3. So the first thing we want to do is we're solving for x, which means there's an equation with an equal sign. when you have an equation, you can get rid of the fractions and make it easier to solve. If you're just combining like terms and simplifying, you have to keep the fraction. But when you have an equal sign, once you get the common denominator, you can multiply each term by it and then get rid of the fractions. So if we look at 4 and 10, what is the common denominator? Or what number does 4 and 10 go into? And if you don't want to say, you can type it in the chat. One way of doing it is to multiply the denominators together. 4 times 10 is 40. So we could use 40. We're going to have a little bigger numbers than we normally would, but you could use it. Now someone typed in 20. Both 4 and 10 go into 20. It is the best number to choose because it's the smallest value they both go into. If we multiply each of these by 20, we will eliminate the fractions. Multiplying your denominators together will work, it's just sometimes the number's larger than you need. But you could have used 40. So I guess what I'm saying is if you can't think of what the number is and you're on a test, multiply them all together, it'll go faster. But 20 is the better choice. What we do is we take each term, 1, 2, 3, there's 4 terms. We multiply each of them by 20. Now simplify before you multiply. We can simplify the 4 and the 20. This 4 cancels, it goes into 25 times. 5 times 3 is 15 times x minus 1. So 4 goes into 25 times. 5 times 3 is 15 times x minus 1. If you want to distribute at the same time, you could. The next one, 3 times 20, there's no fraction to cancel. So 20 times 3 is a negative 60. Only the ones with denominators will reduce. 20 times x is 20x. And then 10 goes into 22 times, so it leaves a negative 2x. It looks like a lot better problem to solve. So by multiplying through by the common denominator, it makes solving simpler, less likely to make a mistake. So if I distribute the 15, I have 15x minus 15 minus 60 equals 20x minus 2x. Any questions so far? Combine like terms, these two. Oh, I guess we can combine these two too. 20 minus 2 is 18. Any questions so far? I'm going to subtract the 15 to the other side. The reason I'm moving the x this way is because there's only this constant. There's not one here. So when I bring it over, it makes it easier to solve. 3. So x is a negative 25. Any questions on that? Number 3. F of x equals 5x minus 10. F of x equals 5x minus 10, and we want to find the 0 of the function. To find the zeros, you set it equal to 0. So if we're looking for the zeros, we set the function 5x minus 10 equal to 0 and solve. Add the 10 to the other side. And divide by 5. So when you're looking for the zeros, you set it equal to 0 and solve. When we're looking for the x-intercept, we let y equal 0 and solve. So it's the exact same thing. You're setting the function equal to 0 and solve. Notice the same thing here. We let f of x equal 0. So these are all ways of asking for the same thing. If they ask for the 0 of function, the x-intercept, or when f of x equals 0, they are all the same thing. So every answer would be x equals 2. Any questions on that one? So they're just all the same. Number 4. The profit from the production and sale of televisions is given by f of x equals 45x minus 8100. X is the number of TVs produced and sold. How many must be produced and sold? I'm sorry, to have a profit of 15,570. F of x is our profit. So if we want a profit of 15,570, we want to find the number of TVs. That tells me I'm looking for X. The value they gave me was profit. So I have to plug it in over here. And then we need to solve for X. To solve for X, we need to get rid of the 8100 first. So we'll add it. So when we combine them, we get 23,670. Then we need to get rid of the 45 to get x by itself. Since this is multiplied, we divide. Did everyone get 526? So we need to sell 526 TVs to make $15,570. Oops. Any questions on part A? Part B. How many TVs must be produced and sold to avoid a loss? How could we find that one? To avoid a loss. That means you're not negative, because a loss would be negative. You're in the hole. This is also called your break-even point. It's where you didn't lose anything, but you didn't make any money yet. This is your zero of your function, your x-intercept, your solution when f of x is 0. That's your break-even. So we set our function 45x minus 8100 equal to 0. When we solve for x, that will tell us how many TVs we have to sell so that we're not at a loss. First thing, add the 8100 to the other side. Still trying to get x by itself. Divide by the 45. It's 180. So we need to sell 180 televisions to not be in the hole or at a loss. Or that's where we break even, is if we sell 180 TVs. Anything after 180, we start making money. Any questions on that? The last part C says, what does the y-intercept mean? Well, if we look at the equation, the y-intercept is the negative 8100, because mx plus b. So it's a negative 8100. When you have a y-intercept, your x value is 0. And x is the number of TVs. If no TVs are produced and sold, so what it's saying is there's no TVs. If no TVs are produced and sold, the profit, negative means a loss, so it's at a loss of $8,100. So before you sell anything, you're already at a loss of $8,100. Any questions on that? or 5. As part of the largest to date damage award in a jury trial in history, the penalty handed down against the tobacco industry included $74 billion judgment. So 74,000 million billion. $74 billion judgment against Philip Morris. In this amount was 94% of the company's 1999 revenue. How much was their revenue? There's a couple ways you could do your rates. You can do percents. Percent over 100 equals part over whole. And they said 94%. And the part was the 74. Because the whole would be, it was 94% of the company's revenue. So it was 94% of the revenue. Now you could put whole, you could put R so you remember it's revenue. Just be careful you don't think of rate. When you have fractions, you can cross multiply. So I took 94 times revenue, 100 times 74 billion. So we have 7.4 trillion. And then divide by 94. So mine put it in scientific notation. 10 means positive. We need to move 10 spaces this way. Now, the MyLabs would probably want the whole value, but it's approximately 78.7 billion. So they made almost 79 billion, and they had to pay 74 billion in the lawsuit. Any questions on that? B is the same thing. Philip Morris, they only had 94%, but there was another company that had 210, but I just put the two together. If this amount was 210% of the company's revenue, how much was their revenue? So the setup is the same, except instead of 94, it's 210%. cross multiply. And then divide by the 210. Now notice this one's more than 100%, so they actually owed more than they made. So their revenue was 35 billion, but they owed 74 billion. More than double. Any questions on that one? If P dollars are invested for T years at a simple interest rate, A equals P plus PRT, is 2,000 invested for 6 years, gives a future value of 3,200. What is the simple interest rate of this investment? So we're looking for the R. They're giving us all the values except for R. A is the amount at the end, P is the principal or starting amount, and T is time in years. So if we look, A, future value. The future value, 3,200. The investment, the starting amount, the principal is the 2,000. We're looking for R. T is the number of years, which is 6. So then we need to simplify and solve for R. I would probably subtract the 2,000. The order you do it in is really up to you as long as you follow the rules. So that would be 1,200, and then 6 times 2 is 12,000. Any questions on that part? So I subtracted the 2,000 and then I multiplied these two together. I'm looking for R, so I need to divide by the 12,000. Any questions on solving it? Now, what you want to be careful on MyLabs, do they want the rate or do they want the percent? And usually they'll say, or they'll show a little percent sign next to it. This is the rate. You have to multiply by 100 to make it a percent. So it would be a 10% rate. You just need to check if they want the decimal or the percent. I would probably ask for percent. But is there any questions on that? Any questions on anything that we did today? Positive.